Today we're covering the 2008 movie Sex and the City. I've talked about my relationship with Sex and the City before. It was absolutely foundational for me. The show started in 1998, and I started watching it immediately. I was 15 years old. I saw the first episode of it at my friend Amanda's house because she had HBO. I couldn't tell at first if I liked it. That first season, like many first seasons of many shows, it hadn't found its tone yet. I also couldn't tell from that first episode if it was going to be a show that was interested in love stories. And this won't surprise you. I only wanted to watch love stories. The plot of the first episode revolves around the question of whether or not women can have sex, quote unquote, like men. Then Carrie meets the man who will turn out to be the love of her life, Mr. Big. And he asks her if she's a hooker and then humiliates her and leaves her on the corner of a street. I was seduced by the show and repulsed by it. I genuinely just couldn't tell if it was for me. And that is what I was trying to figure out when I watched those first episodes of Sex and the City with Amanda. Was this show safe? I still haven't figured out if Sex and the City is safe for me, but I never stopped watching it. It became a touchstone for me. Even when I hated it, I loved the clothes and the styling more than I hated the story. So by the time the movie came out in 2008, I still didn't know if this franchise was safe for me, but I did know that it was being made with me in mind. And in 2008, that in and of itself felt huge. So I went with my friend Rachel to the matinee on opening day. Even at 3 p.m, people were drinking Cosmos out of flasks. Rachel and I probably would have, we just weren't that organized. But as soon as the titles sparkled, literally sparkled, I settled in. They were 100% thinking about me when they made this movie. I could practically hear Michael Patrick King saying, "There's some poor teacher in the San Fernando Valley living with her parents because she has a sick dad, and this movie is going to distract her and make her happy for 2.5 hours." I felt his contempt, and I also felt, at least he knows I exist. So the movie is about our 4 iconic characters, Charlotte, Miranda, Samantha, and Carrie, and their relationships with each other and with their men. The movie starts with Miranda living in Brooklyn with her husband, Steve, and their kid, Brady. They aren't having sex regularly, and Steve cheats, and Miranda cannot forgive him. Samantha has moved to Los Angeles with her boyfriend, Smith, who's now on a hospital weekly show, and Samantha is lonely in LA and resents that her life is all about Smith. Charlotte has everything she ever wanted. Her husband, Harry, her dogs, her daughter, Lily, who she adopted from China, and then she even gets pregnant. Carrie is still with Mr. Big, and the action of the movie starts when Big, who said he would never want to get married for a 3rd time, asks Carrie to marry him.
Why? What, do you want to get married?
I wouldn't mind being married to you. Would you mind being married to me?
No, not if that's what you wanted.
He asks because they are buying a condo together. Carrie can't afford fully 1/2 of the price of the condo, and the imbalance of the power in regards to the real estate makes her uncomfortable. If they get married, it will be communal property and half hers by right. The wedding is going to be a small affair, 75 people. Carrie will wear a vintage white skirt suit. But then, Carrie's old editor at Vogue offers Carrie a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
We're putting together our annual age issue, and we'd like you to do 40.
Great. Who am I interviewing?
No, you. You are 40. I want you to be featured in the magazine as the 40-year-old. And here's the brilliant twist, bride.
40 is, the Vogue editor tells us, the last age that a woman can be a bride without being seen as a freak. So Carrie agrees to do a photo shoot in bridal couture for Vogue. And Vivienne Westwood sees Carrie and her design and says Carrie looked too good in it and gifts Carrie the dress. It's a very generous gift. So this changes the tenor of the whole wedding for Carrie. Suddenly, it's a 300-person affair. It becomes, according to Big, a circus.
This is my third marriage. How do you think that makes me look?
And then at the rehearsal, Miranda, upset by Steve's cheating, tells Big that he's an idiot for getting married. The day of the wedding comes with gowns, allusions to Carrie being a princess, limousines, and Big can't get out of the car. He calls and tells Carrie that he's standing her up at the altar.
He's not coming. Oh my God.
What do you mean he's not coming? Here, take her immediately.
Get me out of here. Get me out of here.
Go. You take her. All right. And I'll stay here and deal with all of this.
And just like that, Carrie runs away from the wedding. Then Big changes his mind. Wait, let's get married. But Carrie, over her meltdown, literally can't hear him.
Carrie, I'm sorry.
I am humiliated.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Carrie.
Come on.
Carrie goes catatonic. She, Charlotte, Miranda, and Samantha all go on the planned honeymoon to Mexico, where Carrie sleeps for days, totally depressed. She emerges, buys back her apartment with her friend's help, hires an assistant played by Academy Award winner Jennifer Hudson, and starts her single life. She does all of the post-breakup things that a rich lady will do. She dyes her hair. She redecorates. Miranda, who's separated from her husband, and Carrie spend Valentine's Day together. At that dinner, two things come out. One, that Carrie thinks that this is her fault.
I let the wedding get bigger than Big. I am the reason that he did not get out of the car.
And also, what comes out is what Miranda said to Big the night before the wedding. When Carrie finds out what Miranda said to Big, that they were fools for getting married, Carrie picks a fight with her best friend.
I tried to tell you once, but then...
Once? You tried to tell me once? You should have tried to tell me every single day.
I know.
Then, one day, Charlotte runs into Big. She gets so upset by the sight of him that her water breaks. When Carrie goes to meet the baby, Charlotte's husband tells her, Big's been writing to you, and he misses you.
No, he's never written to me.
He said he wrote because he didn't have your phone number.
No. No, he's never written. Ever.
Then why would he say he had?
Carrie finds emails that she's been sending to spam, dozens of love letters, copied letters, but still, a nice sentiment. It also happens to be the day that Carrie and Big's dream condo is officially being handed over to the new owners. Carrie, having left a pair of Manolo Blahniks in what she thought was going to be her closet, rushes back to rescue the shoes before the locks change. There, she runs into Big and then runs into his arms. It isn't logic, it's love. Big proposes, and the two have a modest wedding. Also, all is set right with the world. Miranda and Steve get back together, Charlotte has her own biological baby, and Samantha moves back to New York, single. The camera pans out with the four women drinking Cosmos while making fun of the popularity of the drink due to them. Women in the theater around me drank their Cosmos, and then we went back to our lives. I'm Vanessa Zoltan.
And I'm Helen Zaltzman.
And this is Hot and Bothered. Helen Zaltzman, one of my favorite podcasters. Truly, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
What is your relationship to Sex and the City?
I remember watching it when it came out because it was such a big deal televisually, and also we only had 4 TV channels. at the time and no internet, so I watched what was on. So I have seen quite a lot of it, but I've never sought it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like on streaming, I've never thought, oh, I'm going to watch Sex and the City. If I'm in a hotel, I will watch it and I'll think, oh, this is diverting. And I've watched 3 episodes because they just keep coming up and it's actually a good way to pass the time. But I think I feel fairly unmoved by it.
I was still in high school when it came out, and I was a freshman when Carrie started having an affair with Big. And in my freshman dorm, we didn't have any access to cable. And so my mom would record 6 episodes over 6 weeks onto a VHS and ship it to me. And my whole freshman floor would get into the common room and we would watch it on the VCR.
That's fun.
It was so fun. And we were so invested. So now I am a huge rewatcher of things. I rewatch things all the time. I have not rewatched Sex and the City in almost 20 years, not a single episode. And I think it's just because I am scared. I don't want to know how badly this messed with my head, because I think it probably messed with my head pretty badly.
Oh. In what ways?
Like in this movie, they talk about like what is the right amount of sex to have with your partner. And I think that rather than thinking, oh, that's a really normative conversation and I should question whether or not this conversation is valid, I received that as data that like there was a good answer and a bad answer to that question. And so I just think that I've spent the last 20 years with a lot of that, where I think it'll make me sad to realize that a lot of the unhealthy things I think about relationships are because Sex and the City hinted at them.
I also read some critique of the movie pointing out that the TV series had female writing staff along with Michael Patrick King and the movie less so. And having not watched the show for a bit, I can't do a direct comparison, but I did feel like there were many instances in this where the friends are quite cruel to each other, and not even in a way that I'm quite familiar with in Britain, where you show affection by being mean to each other. The sort of sex frequency stuff didn't seem very compassionate. Pube shaming.
The weight stuff?
Oh my God, everyone's jeering at Samantha's imperceptible gut that she suddenly has. I don't love that as an actual fatty. I don't love this thin woman being fat shamed.
Yeah. I can't imagine a group of friends that would make that big of a deal out of 10 pounds. And one of them literally says to her, "How did you not notice?"
I didn't notice.
I know.
Even though they'd put her in a horrific outfit designed for you to notice.
Yeah.
I didn't notice. And then you just get a shot of Samantha shoveling food into her mouth on a plane, because that's what we fatties do, just constantly shoveling. Desperately. God forbid that we should breathe rather than eat. Didn't love it. Unnecessary. But yeah, so sometimes the friendships are unsupportive, even though I do think that this film, as with the TV show, is trying to make friendship the predominant romance.
Yeah, I agree. So that, I think, is like the big confusing thing when I think about like what does Sex and the City believe about love? Because the show and the movie, in theory, is about the 4 women. But I really tried to pay attention this time. I do think that this movie passes the Bechdel test, but only kind of barely. Because as much as it is about the love of these 4 women for one another, one of the only things they talk about is the romantic love lives.
Yeah. And also the acquisition of stuff as either an adjunct to the love life or a replacement for romantic satisfaction.
Yes.
And what I found really missing from this versus the TV show, in the show, they do all have jobs.
Yes.
They do feature, they have important big careers.
Yep.
Whereas in the film, there's none of that. And the sources of fulfillment are weddings, but not necessarily marriage, because that's post-wedding, children having, or the acquisition of property or expensive things to wear.
Yeah.
And then Charlotte actually gets a line that I think is one of the most emotionally truthful parts of the movie, when they're all at an auction of someone's jewelry that their ex has given them, and they need to sell it in order to have money to live. And Charlotte says, I thought this auction would be fun, but it's kind of sad. But then the film turns its back on that. And it's like, but let's say it was fun. Off we go.
That's so funny, because I actually think that that's how I felt about the movie, watching the movie. I thought that this would be fun, but I found it sad.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Why do you think that is?
Why do I think it's sad?
Yes.
I think that each of these women gets humiliated in this movie. Carrie literally yells, I'm humiliated, right? Like with a bird on her head, she gets left at the altar. Charlotte poops her pants. Miranda gets cheated on and then yells on a street, you ruined us. I changed who I was for you. And then Samantha becomes someone who cooks for her man, lays on a table covered in sushi, and then like he doesn't come home. And I feel like I could have actually picked a different humiliating moment for each of them, because I think they each have more than one. And like, it's not that I don't think that being alive is humiliating. I think it is. And I think like representing that humiliation on film in these very glamorous, beautiful, wealthy white women's bodies, there's something comforting in that. Like, as someone who's been humiliated, to be like, Carrie Bradshaw's been humiliated. I could be a size 00 and afford Fendi and still be humiliated. Like, I do think that there's something comforting about it, but also it doesn't feel like that's why the movie is having them be humiliated. We're laughing at them, or they're supposed to be learning lessons from these humiliations.
Yes. And yet what lesson is there?
I don't know.
Because Smith not getting home until late wasn't his fault. It was the film schedule.
Right.
Charlotte shitting herself. There's not really a learning moment in that. Bodies do that sometimes.
Yep.
It was really just because she said, my life's great and I'm really happy. And they had to find one thing to vex her.
I even think that what this movie thinks about romantic love is that romantic love involves like a huge compromise. You're not going to get to wear the Vivienne Westwood dress. He's going to kind of not want to marry you. Like, Steve is going to cheat on you because you haven't had sex with him for 6 months. Which I don't know. I'm like, yes, part of me agrees with that. Like, you do compromise whenever you're in a long-term partnership. And I don't know why. Yeah, it just made me sad this time.
There's a potentially interesting theme in this movie, which is the performance of something versus the reality. And at the beginning, well, it's not really the beginning because this film is so long. It's way too long. But in the first hour, when Big and Carrie agree to get married, it's not big and splashy. It's kind of romantic because there's feeling to it, but it is pragmatic because of housing. And then when it grows into all of the trappings of marriage is when things go wrong. But they still want the fairy tale thing. It still ends with Carrie marrying Big rather than having to put up with being the wife of that guy. And also, you have this character played by Jennifer Hudson, Louise, who it's like they thought when they were already weeks into shooting, oh, damn, everyone is white. We've got to get a black character in. But we won't write anything for her, really, except bag renter.
Yeah.
And has a keyring that says love on it.
Yeah.
And she is experiencing the same as Carrie in that she was dumped by a man who wasn't sure whether he loved her enough. And then they just get back together again. And that question is no longer there.
Yeah.
And then she can give away the keyring because she has love. She can only have one love at once. And it's either the love of a man or the keyring.
Yeah, this question of like, do men love you enough for you to be worth marrying? That is what bums me out. It bums me out that the compromise that Carrie makes is kind of a secret wedding. I think the way that the arc of the movie works as far as Big and Carrie is that you're supposed to believe that Carrie got sucked into the wedding industrial complex. because she was gifted this dress, and therefore she lost track of what the wedding was really about, which, like, fair. And I don't know that I want her to marry someone who couldn't suck it up for a day and get out of the car for her.
Right. He's done it before.
Twice before.
He's got practice.
I'm wondering if you can help me unpack the metaphor of the dresses. The Vivienne Westwood dress that comes into Carrie's life because of who Carrie is. She has this relationship at Vogue. She is someone who cares a lot about fashion. She does this photo spread. That, in theory, doesn't freak Big out. Then the dress comes in. And I understand that it is poor logic to be like, now I have this bigger dress, so I need a bigger wedding. But then she ends up getting married in this suit that Anthony and Charlotte are like, ugh, just that suit? That's all you're going to wear? Is that suit supposed to be dignified, and that Carrie really understood what the stakes of marriage were, and that it was about her and Big, she and Big? Like, I can't figure out which of these two outfits we're supposed to root for. Like, the Vivienne Westwood dress feels, I mean, just like insane to have access to probably like a $50,000 dress. And then the other feels like, I know he doesn't really want to marry me, so I'm going to make this as small as possible.
Yes, it did surprise me when Carrie's like, I found my wedding outfit already, and that's what she chose. I thought that would probably be invisible to her.
Yeah.
Given the stuff she usually wears. I think if she was in a shop, she wouldn't even be able to, her eyes just wouldn't land on it. I think what's interesting about the Vivienne Westwood dress, firstly, Patricia Field said that her choice for the wedding dress had been the black Zac Posen dress that Charlotte wears as a bridesmaid to bring this air of mourning to it because of the nature of Carrie and Big's relationship up to that point. And I thought, wow, what a fascinating choice that would have been. And I could understand why that wouldn't really read to the viewer, or maybe it's just too prophetic of what is about to happen. But also, is the Vivienne Westwood dress some fan service because fans want to see Carrie Bradshaw in a wedding dress? They had waited so long. And it is a punk wedding dress. It's described as punk couture. It has these kind of witchy boobs, this interesting seaming. Mm-hmm. She's wearing a dead bird.
Yep.
So it's a bit like, oh, Carrie Bradshaw's spin on Bride. A lot of fans would want to see that.
So why do you think she's originally attracted to the suit then, before the Vivienne Westwood?
Could be a few things. One is just simply high visual contrast with what she gets, and because you're going from small to large. But yes, I think there are ways in which she performs herself. She's someone who wears costumes all the time, different visual interpretations externally of who she might be. So perhaps you're right that it is kind of like a wifelet outfit, like not too noticeable. And also it goes with the blue Manolo Blahnik shoes that are called back to at the end. And the funny thing is about them is Manolo Blahnik afterwards was like, he sold so many of those shoes after. And he said, we had a very good year thanks to those stupid satin shoes. Don't talk to me about Sex and the City, I get sick.
Oh my God. I want to know everything about that.
Yeah. But as for the City Hall wedding at the end, it feels like it's Big getting his way.
Yeah.
And ultimately that's what always happens. Big gets what he wants.
Yeah.
And she gets a husband who deigned to send her 10 emails of other people's words.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this way. Seek happiness in yourself, Carrie. Find it within.
So what is one of the pieces of subtext in this movie that you would like to make text?
Is there much subtext? A lot of it doesn't seem that subtle.
I know. Mine isn't subtext, really. It's more that this movie really has it both ways, where it like names a thing and then kind of undermines it. It says like 40 is the last time that you aren't ridiculous for being a bride.
That's terrible.
Yes, it is. As someone who I got married at 40, and I remember thinking that as I was picking my wedding dress. I was just like, well, I was told.
I think love is non-ridiculous at all the decades of adulthood.
The older you get, the more dress you can afford, in theory.
Yes.
Like, it puts that line in Enid's mouth, and Enid is a snob, and Carrie kind of rolls her eyes at it. But also, the movie doesn't actually question it. I just think that this movie subtextually believes in everything that it also thinks it's critiquing.
Yes, I thought that particularly when they go to Fashion Week and when they come out, Samantha, who's wearing a fur coat, and I don't think it's the only instance of fur wearing in the film, gets paint thrown on her by two protesters who are the hags of the piece.
Yes.
In that they're wearing normal person clothes.
Yes.
And so she's doing the thing, which is wearing fur. She's getting punished for the thing, so the film can pretend to have a conscience, but she also doesn't care, so you don't have to think about it deeply at all. Phew.
Yeah, the whole premise, right? What we were talking about at the very beginning. It's the four women on the posters, right? Men really are not on the movie posters ever. And so, like, in theory, this movie is about, like, the power of female friendship. Women are the one who are always going to show up for you. And yet, it's constantly going back and forth. Women are the one who always show up for you. But 3 out of the 4 women, like, go back to the men. And you know that the movie is over because there's been an arc with a man. The subtext of the movie is just, like, actually the most important thing is who you end up with and where you live with them. If you live in Manhattan or Brooklyn, and if you're with Big or not. Those are actually the things that matter. It's not female friendship.
Yeah, and if you live in Brooklyn, everyone is going to be a jerk about it, even though it's 2008. It was coming up already. Yeah, I think what is comparable about the friendships as the form of fulfilling relationship is that they are enacting what is important in a marriage that works or a long-term romantic partnership that works, which is kind of teamwork. It's not necessarily about big gestures. Yeah. It's about, like, trust and looking after people when they need that. And sometimes that is reciprocated, or should be, that, you know, it all kind of works out relatively evenly. Successful communication. Yeah, having each other's back in a non-sensational way.
The thing that was very 2008 about this to me was, you mentioned this already, was, like, the Jennifer Hudson character. The fact that, I mean, this is just, like, literally when Obama is becoming president, it's like the white world was like, oh, Black people.
I must get one for my film.
Exactly. And it was one of the big critiques of Sex and the City the first go around, that, like, what version of New York City is this where everyone you hang out with is white? And the role that they give to Jennifer Hudson as this, like, magical Black person who comes in and fixes everything for Carrie and teaches her an important lesson and then disappears as soon as, like, Carrie might owe her anything. It was just really shocking rewatching it. I was like, oh, wow, we really just did that.
Yeah. I think if they'd had this character from the beginning of the film, that might have helped a bit, but introducing her, like, an hour plus in, and then doing nothing except she's a younger version of Carrie.
Yep. She does have that beautiful song at the end, or that song that she sounds beautiful in at the end.
Yes.
She sounds great.
Fine. Throw her that bone. I did love that there was a little Bridget Everett cameo and Annalee Ashford in the other people interviewing.
I know. I had not clocked that before. But there is, like, a joke about cross-dressing.
Yep. Didn't love it. I'll tell you some things that I did like, though. I liked Samantha and Smith's matching sequin dressing gowns that they wear at New Year.
Yes.
I want that.
I like that Carrie wears pearls to bed.
Why not? She's living single. She can just do it for herself. And I do like that. I also liked Miranda calling her on New Year's Eve because she wanted to talk a bit. And Carrie scuttles over in very snow-inappropriate shoes. But I thought that actually felt very genuine as friendship went. And there were a few other friend moments that, like, when they're shopping for Halloween stuff, Carrie and Miranda was actually quite successfully portrayed for me, until they have to have the, oh, I said something to Big and maybe that scuttled your wedding. Like, probably not. Yeah. Like, if something Miranda says to Big at the rehearsal dinner is going to crash the wedding, he was already mentally out of it anyway.
And Carrie goes and watches Lily when Charlotte goes to the doctor.
Right.
And even Charlotte having Lily send Carrie a Valentine, right? Like, there are moments that friendship are really beautifully rendered.
Absolutely. I think one of my favorite bits was when they all go on the honeymoon to the Mexican resort and the friends rush around clearing away all of the welcome honeymooners, stuff like petals on the bed and things. And Carrie is just insensible and Samantha spoon feeds her. And I thought I was curious about the choice to do that because I kind of loved it, but I was also thinking, are they trying to show that this is how Samantha is maternal?
Mm-hmm. I was also really torn on that scene. So I went to the first showing of this movie that I could. I was so excited. My friend Rachel and I were teaching high school English, both of us, and we agreed to let our students out 5 minutes early so that she and I could get out of the parking lot early before like the big rush so that we could make it to the last matinee showing of the movie to not have to pay full price tickets for the Friday night showing. So like that is how invested Rachel and I were in seeing this movie on our teacher salaries. And I remember the moment where Carrie took off her glasses and looked in the mirror at herself in the honeymoon suite. The audience gasped, Helen, because it's the first time that any of us have like seen Sarah Jessica Parker not in makeup. And so watching it this time, part of me hated Carrie for how seriously she was taking this when she's like, isn't it like a death? And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not like a death. Of course, being left at the altar is incredibly humiliating and awful. Did you not find Carrie's response frustratingly self-pitying?
Well, that seems in line for the character.
Sure.
I do think she is often very immature and kind of living in a story because when a long relationship ends, like something you're grieving is the future that you don't have together.
Totally.
I'm sure the humiliation would take a lot of recovery from, and the feeling of rejection and the feeling that, oh, he didn't choose me. Is it because I'm not worth it enough? All those things. Oh no, now I'm in my 40s and single. Like it could be a lot of things. So I didn't find it that implausible. But the relationship feels so scant that it's hard to feel super invested in her heartbreak.
The reason I brought it up is because I couldn't tell if I found the moment with Samantha spoon feeding her sweet or like really annoying, that I'm like, you physically can feed yourself.
Yes, it was a bit, I'm baby.
Yeah.
I think at the point where she actually put the spoon in Carrie's mouth and then for a second time, I was like, no, this is the point where you hand her the spoon.
The spoon. Yeah.
I can understand that she is struggling to eat because that is some people's misery response.
Yeah.
But she's already out there. Like you've got most of the way now to getting her to eat something. So I didn't like the babying. On the other hand, I did think if any of the friends were wanting to be babied, it would be Carrie.
Yeah.
But then also the film is like trying to add this nurturing dimension to Samantha in getting her a dog.
Yeah.
Why? I don't need that from that character. I don't need her to be a nurturer.
Samantha was always given the sexiest friend lines in the show to me. When Carrie needs money, Samantha's the one who's like, I'll give you the money. When Carrie is cheating on Aiden with Big, Samantha's like, I'm not judging you. But yeah, not maternal caretaker.
No, there's other ways in which she shows care.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is she's giving Carrie modes of freedom.
Yes.
But then when they're all like, oh, look at you, Miranda, we can see your pubes. You've really let yourself go. You're like, okay, well, she stomps away from that interaction wearing 5-inch heels, which she's been wearing just to hang out with her friends in private.
Yes.
In Mexico. Has she let herself go? Because that's quite a high effort shoe.
Yeah.
Didn't love it.
The shoes in this movie really stressed me out the whole time.
Oh, yeah. I have hypermobile ankles, so even looking at them is upsetting.
So, Helen, when we have a guest, we each get an emergency stop button. So let's stop here and talk about something that really struck us in this movie. What is something that you feel like we absolutely have to talk about in this movie?
I think we must talk about the blue taxidermied bird that Carrie wears on her head during the first wedding.
Okay.
Not just because it is adding this element of macabre to an outfit that otherwise I think holds up very well. It's because it's an interesting trend to think about. It's from the 1800s. It's a vintage bird hat. Sarah Jessica Parker was enraptured by it and had to kind of convince Michael Patrick King that that's what the character should wear. And it is from an era when bird feathers and bird parts like bird heads, bird wings, bird tails, and whole birds were a very, very fashionable accessory in the 19th and early 20th century. Some bits of feathers were even selling more per ounce than gold. Wow. Millinery was this huge industry. It was like a pretty dangerous one, not just because of the toxic chemicals, but like they were working these feathers. A single plume could take 2 days to prepare from like an adult and 2 child laborers. It's quite upsetting stuff, and all the wisps going into their lungs. But it also just so fashionable that bird populations were wasted. There was an estimate of about 300 million birds per year killed worldwide for fashion, and at the time, no legal protections. And this, in 1913, they introduced one of the first environmental laws in the US, the Weeks-McLean Act, that prohibited the spring hunting and marketing of migratory birds and the importation of feathers for women's fashion to end what they called millinery murder.
Wow.
I mean, they could still use non-migratory birds' feathers. Anyway, I thought, how Carrie to be like, oh, cool, dead bird, and not like, oh, yeah, representative of just billions and billions of birds being killed for this accessory that looks like a dead bird has landed on your head.
Yeah, and I also love the way that Carrie talks about it, of like, he couldn't get out of the car, I put a bird on my head.
Yeah, your choice. Your choice.
Yes, but like, she sees it as this like effort and attention to detail.
Which, for all she knows, Big could have put a bird on his head. She just doesn't get to see him.
She does. Yeah, he took it off by the time they run into each other in the street.
Exactly.
The thing I want to talk about is whether or not you think that this movie thinks Charlotte is ridiculous.
Okay.
So a question that we had when we did Pride and Prejudice was, who does Jane Austen think is ridiculous? Because Austen thinks most people are ridiculous. And so when does she think that they're being ridiculous? Because even characters who she loves, like Mr. Bennet, he gets taken down a peg. And I can't tell if this movie thinks that Charlotte is ridiculous. So there is one moment that this like really comes to a head for me, where when Carrie and Big confront each other in the middle of the street, Carrie turns around and runs into Charlotte's arms, and Charlotte grabs her and screams at Big in this very hysterical way, no! And it's very fierce and defensive and protective. And then immediately Carrie gets put back in the car and Charlotte has to waddle to get into the limo because her dress is so tight that she can't walk in it. And then she has to get into the cab in this funny way, like this butt first way. And you see like the fin of her dress pop up. And like you mentioned earlier, Charlotte is the one that you're getting the sense that like there's something cloying about Charlotte with her being like, okay, groomy. That Big is like, oh, I don't want to participate in that. And yet Charlotte is also the one like with the only quote unquote good marriage. Yeah, I'm wondering if you can help me figure out if this movie thinks that Charlotte is ridiculous.
I think that it doesn't really consciously frame it like that. I think what it does explicitly state is that Charlotte is very happy. She says she has everything she ever wanted.
Yes.
So, of course, they have to make her afraid of it all going wrong, but I think that is not an unusual form of anxiety to have about your nice life. You don't see her relationship being performed, so you just have to assume that it's going well. You see her child a bit. You see her have another child. You see her jogging. That's about as much character as you see, apart from her being wedding ghoul.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they're just like, okay, so she's happier than Miranda, so we have to make her more unserious just for contrast, because otherwise you've got these people in long-term relationships raising children together, and we don't want to break these ones up because we just want to keep it going, but we're also not going to remark on that of what makes this a happy partnership. So I think actually this film just doesn't care whether Charlotte is ridiculous or not, because I think it just doesn't really care that deeply about that character because they can't think of what to do with her.
Yeah.
I think what this film values is acts of service. That's how love is truly shown rather than gesture. And she receives that ride from Big, and so she must be an emotional instigator in getting Carrie to forgive him. And that's her main function, but it happens off screen.
Yeah, it's interesting. The movie doesn't really know what to do with a happy woman.
No, which is often the case. Like, as a student of Veronica Mars, that was something that Rob Thomas was always doing. He was like, well, Veronica's not interesting if she's happy. And I was like, there's ways you can be unhappy and you don't have to break up people's relationships.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that happen in adult life that can also be interesting apart from getting together or getting back together.
And I will say, I haven't gone back and rewatched it, but I remember the ending, Miranda's ending, being really interesting about her mother-in-law.
Mm.
What was changing Miranda at the end of the series was realizing that getting married also means caring about someone else's family, and that part of loving Steve means loving his mom who has Alzheimer's. So I just also think that there are ways to make plot and conflict happen without making someone profoundly unhappy. Adulthood is complicated.
Right, exactly. And I think there's just most of culture doesn't think, oh, we can make an interesting plot out of a long-term relationship that isn't a disaster.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah.
And also just people where they are fulfilled and happy outside of relationships. That would be great. Can't have it though, Vanessa. Not from this film.
No. I just have to say, I feel like I say this at the end of a lot of episodes. I really love looking at the clothes. I still really visually liked watching this movie.
Oh, yeah. No problem with that.
It's so beautiful.
Yes, I think Patricia Field is excellent at what she does. The outfits really hold up, which a lot of things from 2008 don't. But that is the main pleasure, isn't it?
And just watching, like, in this movie, for some reason, Carrie is obsessed with that, like, punk belt and belts everything with that one belt.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, yes, you look amazing in, like, a twee pink dress and in a leather jacket. Like, yes, always put that belt on everything, Carrie.
And she does. She does. I will say that I didn't find it very visually movie-like. And the way that it was written as well, it could have just been they wrote another season of the show and then just jammed it into a 2.5-hour film.
Yeah, it's 6 episodes of a show. I think that that's right. So please finish this sentence for me.
Mm-hmm.
You should watch this movie
if you want the vibe of the series, but with less wordplay and less sex. You want to watch some white cishet middle-aged relationship discord, but before midnight is just too depressing. You've always wondered if Samantha Jones got a pet, what pet would she get? Or you have to watch either this or the second Sex and the City movie, and there are no other choices.
Definitely this one.
And Vanessa, how would you finish the sentence, you should watch this movie if?
I think that this movie is really interesting, and I love the clothes. And so I think that if you can handle a scene in which someone gets openly ridiculed for having gained 10 pounds and another character openly admits to having a throw pillow that costs $300, if you can handle both of those things, then I think give this movie a try. It's so pretty. The colors are so bright.
At least they don't put Samantha in a fat suit. I bet they thought about it. But instead they just got her some slightly too small pants.
Helen, where can people listen to you, find you? What are you working on these days?
Well, I have my podcasts, The Illusionist, an entertainment show about language, which you can hear at theillusionist.org, and Answer Me This, which is a podcast where we answer questions from the listeners, and that is at answermethispodcast.com.
And I highly recommend both of those podcasts.
Well, thank you.
And then I recommend being a creep and making Helen become your in real life friend.
Yes.
So Helen and I talked about the Sex and the City movie, but Sex and the City was so not just like popular and in the zeitgeist, but culturally significant that we felt like it was really important to get some more context just on the show itself. To that end, we're going to get Professor Janet McCabe on the show. Janet is a reader in television and film studies at Birkbeck University of London. She's the managing editor of the journal Critical Studies in Television, the International Journal of TV Studies, and the co-editor of Reading Sex and the City: Critical Approaches. Let's get Janet on the phone. Hi, Janet.
Hi, Vanessa. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for getting on the phone with us today.
No problem. It's lovely to speak to you.
So I'm going to start really broad. I am wondering if you can just sort of brainstorm with me some of the many, many, many ways that Sex and the City has impacted our culture.
That's a really good question, Vanessa. I think there is sort of two answers in many ways. It's what Sex and the City meant at the time in 1998, 99 when it came out, and what it means now. When it came out initially, it just took the zeitgeist by storm. And I don't think even HBO could have anticipated the impact that show would have, because it spoke to a generation of women in a way that had never been spoken to before, in that it wasn't so much what they were saying, it was the fact that they were saying it at all. And it was the first time that we had this kind of representation on our television screens. And it was really quite revolutionary. There was something about the liberation of their language which really sort of changed, the conversation. And in many ways, it came at the end of a sort of cycle of feminism as well. We had started with the second wave. We had moved to post-feminism where everything had been sorted. But the intersectional politics of the 1990s suggested, no, we hadn't. So here we had, at the end of the 90s, this group of women who were very stereotypical in many ways. But within that representation, they gave us a sort of sense of experience of where we were in our troubled age of emancipation. So if I'm responding to the question where we are now, the show has become a classic in the fact that it has been repeated and it stays and remains with us within our culture. And I think that its politics have become more troubling.
Yeah.
The politics of the 1990s are not the politics now. We've gone through Me Too. And I think in a way, Sex and the City has sort of anticipated the problems. That here were these women who were very liberated in so many ways, but actually probably not quite liberated enough as well.
I even think about it as a place where I first saw that you could wear heels without pantyhose, and that it liberated me to believe that you could see my bra straps. I didn't have to hide the fact that I was wearing a bra. I remember I was 16 when it came out, and that those two things blew my mind.
Yeah.
It was just like literally tactile in that way.
Absolutely. I think that there was a sense, because the fashion almost became, the fifth character of the show.
Yeah.
And that sense of empowerment and how it was dressed, that, liberation in the 80s with the suits, with the shoulder pads and the body armor, if you like. And then there was something incredibly feminine and sexy, but yet empowering and liberating at the same time with that fashion. So the fashion did a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you can just talk to us about like the HBO of it all. I remember thinking a lot at the time, sort of like counting the boobs, literally being like, oh, it's interesting whose boobs we see and when and how much, and that we never see Sarah Jessica Parker's, and
which was in her contract.
I'm wondering even just what that did, right? Like it was prestige TV that young women were watching, and it was also kind of, as someone who grew up on rom-coms, like there was no nudity.
Yeah.
And I think now we actually think of Sex and the City in a lot of ways as quite prude.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if in the context of the time you could talk about the way that the conversations about sex would have been received at the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, going back to the fact that it was HBO, that this was not a mainstream show. It wasn't on NBC, ABC, that was part of the brand identity of HBO and The Sopranos and Deadwood, that this was a place which licensed, bad language, profanity, and it became sort of part of its brand identity. But I think what HBO did and what was very clever is that because HBO elevated culture to something that resembled, more like European art cinema, if you like.
Yeah.
Within that context, the sex and the profanity had these overtones of, a sort of European, cosmopolitan, liberated way of thinking about culture. I mean, how you read it is something else, but the way that HBO were positioning it was to try to have an adult conversation about such matters. And there was, especially with Kim Cattrall, there was a real sense of her own bodily agents within it.
Yeah, I remember the show Dream On being on HBO before, and how there were naked women in that show all the time. And it felt very much, I would not have been able to say this at the time, but it was very much supposed to be for the male gaze. And the nudity in Sex and the City is just so interesting because it is sort of for the female gaze. Yeah, it was supposed to be representative rather than tittillating, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially when you compare it to the contemporary show, which would have been The Sopranos.
Yeah.
And, you have to remember that the demographic for Sex and the City were women and, gay men. So there was a different politics of that gaze. Although not to say that, you're still looking at quite beautiful bodies. So, I mean, that's the thing with representation that's quite radical, that it will always contain a very conservative element, that we weren't going to see those bodies which were going to upset us too much.
Right.
So, you're still kind of working within a culture which still has particular ideals about, the feminine body, the feminine skin, about race, about class. I think there was always a sense, and I've always said this, that Sex and the City in many ways, it had a burden of representation because we didn't have so many representations of women like that around. It was meant to do everything, and it couldn't do that. It could never do that. And part of its success was the fact that it didn't go there.
Yeah. So one of the sort of like lasting effects of Sex and the City is this question of, are you a Miranda? Are you a Carrie? Are you a Samantha? Are you a Charlotte? And I'm wondering how you see that sort of playing out now and then. What are these four women sort of archetypes for?
Yeah, very good question. And again, it goes back to that sort of burden of representation. I mean, we don't sit there and say, are you Tony Soprano? Are you Pauline Walnuts? But we did it with these girls. And it's also that sort of sense that they did provide a kind of blueprint for different ways of being. I mean, I suppose everybody sort of wanted to be Carrie in many ways, because she was the every girl in so far as that she sort of had all those different elements of the other girls. But the others were so, in many ways, quite black and white. I mean, Miranda did represent that promise of the liberated, educated woman who was utterly in control of her own life. And Samantha was so liberated in her sexuality. And then you've got Charlotte, who is still that girl who believes in the fairy tale. So in many ways, those archetypes are speaking to conversations that I think women are actually having with themselves. And they did allow us, I think, to have that conversation about who are we and where are we. And I think particularly in the latter stages of the show, you know, when children and that desire to be a mother came into play, that it allows you to talk about those options, because women's lives are quite circumscribed in many ways. That sense of that having it all isn't quite the story that we're all sold. And so I think the show sort of dealt with those paths. And I think where it was really radical is when it was dealing with like Charlotte's infertility, you know, the dilemma that Miranda had about going back to work. But also, you know, finding herself pregnant and thinking, well, actually, if I don't take this chance, I won't ever have another chance. And then when Carrie was thinking of marrying her lovely Russian, that sort of sense that she would have to give up her dream of having a child. So I think what those stereotypes did, or I would call them archetypes rather than stereotypes, but these archetypes, they were kind of working through issues that women are themselves working through, about that balance of our lives, about, you know, who we are as sexual beings, as wanting to be mothers, to want to work, and so on.
I truly do remember Carrie talking about potentially not wanting a child as I remember thinking, oh, this is the first time I've seen a character on screen say, I might not want a kid, but be ambivalent about it. Not right, like actually have that be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And how exciting it was to see that conversation happen on screen. So Janet, when people go and rewatch Sex and the City or, you know, the movies, or even watching And Just Like That now, what are some of the questions that you think we should be asking ourselves as we go back and do that?
I think one of the questions would be, how far have we really come?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things to also, I suppose, think about is to think about, I'm not sure that there are those platforms so much these days. Interestingly, I think they've sort of migrated maybe online, so that those conversations are happening in an echo chamber. And the promise of Sex and the City was that it offered a conversation to a broader audience. So, you know, that would be one of the things I would say, was to think about how can we have a conversation which is more inclusive, that we're not just talking to ourselves, but we're talking to people who might not agree and who might not think the same. But Sex and the City did that. I mean, they did it between the four girls.
Yeah. Janet, thank you so much for getting on the phone with us.
Not at all.
It was really a pleasure.
Lovely speaking to you.
You've been listening to Hot and Bothered. We are a teeny tiny show, so we need your support to run. If you can, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/hotandbotheredrompod. We have like amazing perks there. Like they're amazing. Bonus whole episodes, truly. We read movie reviews of the movies that we watched and discuss the ways in which those movie reviews hold up and not. I mean, like, truly fun conversations are happening over there. Sign up. We are a Not Sorry production. I'm the executive producer, and we are edited and produced by Ariana Nettleman and distributed by Acast. A huge thanks, as always, to our soulmates. Molly Reilly, who we would chase through an airport to declare our love to. Elizabeth Schweinsberg, whose heart we would play a game of one-on-one basketball for. Lauren Byer O'Connell, who we would call up on stage to dance with us in front of the whole summer camp. Avi Lichtenstein, who we would make every person in the kingdom try on a shoe for. Kristen Hall, who we would travel through a time portal to spend the 19th century with. Shiri Yadlin, who we would write a sonnet about and then read it in front of the whole class. Delia Rose, who we are majorly, totally, but crazy in love with. And Leia Goldberg, who we would carry on our backs as we jump from tree to tree like a little spider monkey. And our wonderful team, Julia Argy, Nikki Zoltan, AJ Ramos, Courtney Brown, Danny Langley, Anissa Ahmed, and Stephanie Paulsell. And a huge thanks to Helen Zaltzman for joining us today.